about the injury. It's not about the injury. It's about the recovery. It's about the recovery.
Hello, this is Tony Abatangelo live at the Red Chip Studios, pre-recorded for some folks. However, we're here today for the Paul Padda podcast for a local treat. I'm very excited. I have Don Merritt from the Neon Museum. And Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And I had to even go on the website and print out a few things.
Good. You did your homework?
Yes, a little homework, especially being born and raised in Las Vegas. Why don't we hear a little bit about the museum and yourself as well?
Okay.
And then we'll kind of banter because I'm so excited about some old history.
Well, have you actually been to the museum?
No, I have not.
Well, shame on you because locals need to go. You're going to recognize a lot of those signs.
I'm going to be revoked my local privilege
Yes,
card?
you are.
Oh, dang it. And especially Tim Burton, when the office, here at Paul Padda, by the way, said you were coming on and Tim Burton was still, his display was still there.
Yeah.
I was so excited. I've got a brother-in-law, and he loves tattoos, and they're all like cartoon characters. Mm-hmm. He's got like half his body, or arm, one arm and another leg, are all from the Nightmare Before Christmas. He loves Tim Burton.
Well,
so we're going to have to make sure we get there.
You are, because we had a book signing with Tim Burton, and he signed a young lady's hand so she could get a tattoo of his signature on her hand. That's a fan.
That is dedication.
It is.
I love it.
Yeah.
So why don't you give us a little background about the museum to start off?
Well, the museum has been around since 1996. We actually started out as an entity of the city of Las Vegas, but now we are spun off. We're our own 501c3 nonprofit, and we have been operating in our current location since October of 2012.
Where were you guys prior to that? Because I thought you guys were always down by Cashman Field.
We were there, but we didn't have the La Concha as our visitors lobby. We didn't offer you tours on a daily basis. It was led by volunteers. For now, we have a staff of 55 people that lead guided tours, that we have an online mobile app, so you can, if you don't want to go on a guided tour, you can hear about signs and read about signs. We also have people that are stationed throughout the yard if you just want to walk around and ask them questions.
Well, I'm going to have to get my kids on that. They're all young adults, and
They will love it.
I was so embarrassed. My son is a sophomore at University of Nevada, Reno, had blackjack night at a fraternity thing.
He didn't know how to play?
No. I mean, he could count to 21.
But
you know, that's a good dad that I am. But I was so embarrassed that, I mean, I grew up here. I would go into all these places as a kid. I mean, it was a lot different because it wasn't corporate.
Yeah.
And that's where when you see some of these signs that I've got here, like the Silver Slipper, the Horseshoe, I even remember Society Cleaners.
Yeah.
But some of these, you know, I mean, kids were wandering around there, you know.
Do you remember Steiner Cleaners, the Happy Shirt?
That, I'm trying to, where was that
The
located?
arms went up and down. I believe it was on Fremont Street, 330. I can't remember the location, but we have that sign and it's been restored. So the arms go up and down again. It weighs its little shirt arms.
That I would remember. Probably have nightmares, but that's another story. But I remember going to movies at the El Cortez on Fremont Street in the 70s.
We have an El Cortez sign.
Oh yeah, but there's just such a crazy history, especially in the 80s and 90s. Before the town got big and really grew, neon was considered cheesy or, you know, not classy. And what's a little history on the neon in Vegas and how it came to be, if you have any
Neon was actually born in France, and it made its way to Vegas. It became, probably its peak was in the 50s, and then it started waning. But it became very popular because about 66, people started using it and taking vacations with their families. And these little mom and pop hotels and motels, they would have to have a huge sign so you could see it from the road and pull in there and spend the night. That's why they really embrace neon.
So it gives it the brightness.
Yeah, it gives it the brightness, but you can also see it from a long way.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Because also back in the day, Las Vegas Boulevard was the freeway.
Oh,
the
yeah,
50s and
it was.
60s. There was no I-15.
Nope.
There was nothing like that. So my parents used to talk about driving out there. And actually, I think when you're on the 15, you see that road parallel to the 15.
Yes.
Like out by Jean and even on the way there. That's the old freeway that people would take to come to Vegas.
Yeah, it is.
And people don't get that.
No. You know, it's just interesting that a lot of the signs that we have, you would remember when they were actually being used. For instance, the Stardust. Do you remember Mullet Man or Doc and Eddie's Pool Hall at Decatur and Arville?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Doc, I remember the pool.
Okay, it's a huge iron sculpture, and it's a pool player. We call him Mullet Man because his hair is a mullet, and it's really funny. But
my college roommate, Danny Natisse, his mom did the furs for Liberace. He used to always be fluffing that hair out with his mullet.
Steiner Cleaners, they catered to Liberace. They cleaned all of his costumes.
And that goes right back.
Yeah.
And Anna Natisse is his mother. She was part of the Liberace Museum and all that. And my wife, who is also a local, would help Anna and the other daughter was Stephanie. They were best of friends. Put rhinestones and individual hand done.
Oh yeah.
You know, on those big fur capes or as well as fur, but as well as whatever other material. Those things weighed 40, 50 pounds.
I know.
Easy.
I don't know how he wore them, but we have a restored Liberace sign. It used to be on the outside of the Liberace Museum.
Right.
It's the piano with his name. It was the signature that he would always use, and he would draw a little candelabra. So that's been restored now, and that's in the yard, and it's beautiful because it's pink.
That sounds like Liberace. But speaking of the Stardust, now I remember my dad telling me, and I was a kid, so I think it was 70s, if not early 80s, that the Stardust put a little addition on top of their sign to make it the tallest sign. Do you know anything about that?
At one time, it was the tallest sign being used in Las Vegas. I think it was 185 feet tall, which is enormous. So we have that spire in the yard, and it reaches up. The sign that we have now that's higher than that, though, is the Hard Rock Cafe guitar. That is 82 feet tall. You can see it from the freeway.
Oh, yeah. No, I've driven by there all the time. So the spire was added to make it the tallest. I remember my dad talking about that, and as a kid, you know, that was a big competition back in the day.
It was. The sign companies competed with each other to outdo each other, you know, bigger and better and taller, and it became quite the competition in Las Vegas because neon is our skyline.
Right, and my understanding was Yesco, wasn't that a big
Yesco,
neon?
Young Electric Sign Company, yes.
And who else were the big ones?
Federal Heath, Allied, what was it? Allied, I believe was the name of it. There were several sign companies in town. Yesco is still around. They are still, in fact, they had their 100-year anniversary this year. They've been around that long.
That's a long time for Vegas
It
standards,
is,
of course.
and that's how the Neon Museum got started. It was actually a storage lot for Yesco. They call it a boneyard because they repurposed pieces of signs. The hotels didn't own them, they rented them. So if they went out of business, they rebranded, the sign company would come take the sign down, put it in their boneyard, and repurpose parts of it for a new sign. So we were there at the corner of Cashman, next to the baseball field, and that's how the Neon Museum got started in its current location. And then we included the La Concha lobby is now our visitor center. So you enter that way and you go and you see the story of Las Vegas.
And the Domaney family owned the La Concha.
Yes. They donated that building to us, which is amazing. So we cut it into 8 pieces and we moved it to where it is and put it all back together. And that was just an architectural feat in itself because nobody knew if it would work because it was a concrete building and they'd never done it before.
So obviously it weighed a ton.
Yes, it weighed a whole lot.
Right. And that building is so unique with the arches. Right?
Yeah, it's shell shaped. That's what La Concha means. Shell.
Well,
yeah.
thank you. See, I've been enlightened. I like it. So the La Concha, owned by the Domaneys. I grew up down the street from one of the Domaney families. Fred's still alive, and Noah's kids are great people. Old school Vegas.
Old school Vegas.
That was, that's the other thing is that the nice thing about the history is in Vegas, the casinos were owned by individuals, and that obviously changed in the 90s with corporations and publicly traded companies. And you could go in to any casino and you would be treated like a king, as opposed to now you have to have your points and your reward card and all that. It was a whole different, I guess, atmosphere and culture.
It was.
So that's why that comes into some of these, I presume some of your exhibits. Now with this, I pulled this up, I loved it. The Restored Las Vegas Neon Sign Tour. Is that considered one of your exhibits or is that something different?
Those signs are part of our collection. We are responsible for them, but they're available to the public 24/7. And so you can drive past them, you can read about them, you don't have to pay to see them.
Well, some of these stories are missing stuff.
Well, when you've only got, how many inches of copy, you can't get it all, the whole story in there.
The horseshoe, they don't talk about, you didn't play around with the horseshoe.
No.
And how long have you been out in Vegas?
I've been here 30 years.
So you know. I remember one time a friend of mine was all beat up. I'm like, what happened to you?
What was he doing at the horseshoe?
That's what he said. He was being drunk and acting like a fool, and they took him downstairs.
Didn't
So
put
you
up with
can't-
that
That's the
nonsense.
stuff you got to put on the signs.
Well, we have to make sure it's carefully vetted and accurate, and I don't know that anyone would own up to that.
Oh, no.
No, all of our information, we have an education department. They do a lot of research to make sure that everything that we're sharing with the public is accurate and true.
Oh, of course. And that's also
Well,
some of the
for
mystique, too, is
Yeah.
these other stories that float
For
around.
instance, the silver slipper.
Oh,
When
I was
Howard
getting to the
Hughes,
silver slipper.
Howard Hughes, he bought it, and the rumor for the longest time was he thought there was a camera in the toe of it, and he filled up the shoe with concrete. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not true, because we have restored that sign. There was no concrete in the toe, and there was no camera in the toe. So that is not
and
true.
My mother-in-law, who's been a food server forever, she's retired now. She was a food server, the Silver Slipper. And also Kenny Kerr.
Yeah,
the
Boylesque.
Boylesque. Boy, if you're going to go see a Boylesque show,
That's the
and
one.
actually I just saw RuPaul's Drag Race show. My wife loves that stuff. For Valentine's Day, you got to be careful because some of those guys are hot.
Well, RuPaul actually came for a tour one day,
Oh, my
and you wouldn't
gosh.
have recognized him though. He looked like he belonged in the Secret Service. You know, he's very tall
And
with a shaved
slender,
head,
yep.
but he had on all black, and he did have a large pocketbook, he called it. And so he took his tour, and afterwards people started recognizing him, and they wanted to do photos, and he was nice, and he took photos with him, and then he left.
That's awesome because that is, especially for the Silver Slipper. I mean, that was a standard show for years.
Yeah.
out here. What other exhibits do we have over at the Neon Museum?
Well, we have Tim Burton. That we have extended that through Easter Sunday, which is April 12th. So if you want to see the Tim Burton pieces interspersed throughout our collection, you need to get over there
So
before
I
then.
need to get on that.
You need to get on that.
Because my Las Vegas resident cards are being revoked.
That's right.
As well as Tim Burton's.
I will be
Great.
checking on you.
Okay.
So we have that in our main yard, and then over in our parking lot, we have another gallery called the North Gallery, and we project light onto the signs, so they look like they're fully restored and functional, but they're not. And so it's an entire show, and it's set to music, and there are Tim Burton
really?
touches interspersed within that as well.
All right, so let's break this down. So what is the Tim Burton exhibit, I should say?
So Tim Burton, he loves Las Vegas. He grew up in Burbank, and he used to come here all the time with his family as a child, and it always had this mystique for him. And when the landmark was imploded, he got video of it, and he used that in his movie Mars Attacks. And ever since then, he's had
That's
this.
right, I forgot
Yeah,
about that.
he's had a love affair with Las Vegas and a fascination with it. He came to us, and said that he was interested in doing an exhibit that was site specific to the Neon Museum. So he created pieces specifically for us based on his memories.
Okay, so it's Vegas based.
It's called Lost
not about
Vegas.
his movies and all that stuff.
There are some Martians from Mars Attacks. They weren't from the actual movie, but they
Right.
looked just like the ones that were in the movie.
But none of his other
none of
movies
the
that
other-
everybody would know.
No.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so
That's
it's touches
wonderful.
of Tim Burton.
Nice, because speaking of the landmark, which was located at Paradise and Convention Center Drive,
Mm-hmm.
for those listening that aren't familiar with that had the restaurant on top that
Yeah,
used to
rotated.
rotate. And Howard Hughes came in, and like you said, I think he built it, or did he buy it after it's been started?
I believe he bought it after.
Right, and then actually an old timer from Vegas, they used to call him Wildcat Morris, bought it. And his family, they grew up down the street from us. They called him Wildcat because there's a famous Las Vegas high school football team. And my ex-father-in-law who's passed was on that team, and they went undefeated, and they beat California teams.
And they were the Wildcats?
And it was the Las Vegas Wildcats.
Oh, okay.
After the high school, but there's so much history here.
So
I mean,
much.
it's so much history looking at these signs. Like I see also the Hacienda.
Horse and Rider.
Give us a little background about the Hacienda.
That was the first one that we installed as part of that project, the Las Vegas Signs Project. That was the first one we installed that you could actually go and visit on your own. And then it went from there, little by little, and now we have a total of, I believe, 27 signs that have been restored, and we keep adding to that. We are going to be, we're working on the Stardust sign right now to put bulbs back in it to light it up again.
All right, well, we're going to follow right up. We're going to take a little break. We're going to come back with Don Merritt of the Neon Museum here at the Paul Padda Podcast. We're very excited for the next half of the show.
Good.
Hi folks, this is Paul Padda for the people. You might be wondering, why is Paul holding a cell phone in one hand and a license plate in the other? As a personal injury attorney, I'm here to give you a tip. First of all, if you've been in a car accident, like most people, you're probably going to be a little shaken up and confused and not sure what to do. It's only several days later that you think, oh my gosh, I should have done this, I should have done that to document the car accident. Well, listen, if you've got a phone, you have the strongest weapon you could have on your side. Just take a picture of the other driver's license plate. With that information, when you come to see us or you go to see any other lawyer to bring a personal injury claim, you'll be able to get all the information you need in order to pursue your claim. And with the driver's license, we can go to DMV, we can find out who the owner of the vehicle is, we can find out what type of insurance coverage they have. So documenting what happens at the time of an accident is very important, and the most important piece of information you can get is the other driver's license plate number. This is Paul Padda for the People with another tip for you. Thank you.
Hello, Tony Abbotangelo doing the Paul Padda podcast live at the Red Shrimp Studios. And I keep saying live even though this is recorded for a lot of people. Don Merritt over at the Neon Museum. We're just getting into talking about some of the exhibits at the Neon Museum. Why don't we just do some basic stuff too? Where is it located? I've been talking like everybody knows where it's at.
We are at 770 Las Vegas Boulevard North. We are right next to Cashman Field Center, which is where the Las Vegas Lights play. The baseball team used to be there. You can't miss the signs if you're driving along Las Vegas Boulevard.
They stand out. So it's just a little bit north of Fremont Street,
Yeah.
off of Las Vegas Boulevard.
Yeah.
There's an entry fee.
There's an entry fee. Right now for Tim Burton it's $30, which is not exorbitant, and it gives you access to the yard as long as you want to stay there. Most people, they're in and out in about an hour, but some are fascinated with everything and they will spend a couple of hours there just taking photos. You know, we encourage people to take photos and post them on their social media sites and talk about what they liked.
Well, and that's where, as we were talking about the first half, a lot of the history of Las Vegas, and especially how it was all desert. I mean, there was a lot. It wasn't like it is now.
No, not
let
at all.
alone the population size. But the hotels used to drive up to the valet, and there was, you know, these big signs, and it wasn't just at the strip.
Yeah.
But I was on the website, and there was a thing. Once again, you said North.
We have a
Is it
North Gallery.
North Gallery.
It used to be
Explain
a
that.
storage lot for us, and so it was just space that was not being used, and we decided to curate it a bit so people could come in and see it. And then an artist approached us. His name is Craig Winslow, and he had an idea to project light onto the signs. We'd never done it before, so we did a test with him, and we were amazed at what he could do with a projector and a computer. So you project light onto them. They look like every bulb is lit, every neon tube is lit. They look like the paint is redone.
And let me ask you
Not
this:
at all.
when you look at that sign, if you were familiar with that sign, would it look just like it did?
It would look exactly like it did. For instance, we have the Lady Luck, and I don't know if you remember it, but it had a
Oh,
heart
yeah.
in the middle of it. So when you go to see Brilliant, the experience begins with that heart starts coming to life and it starts beating, and you hear Frank Sinatra singing "Luck Be a Lady," and
Oh,
and it
beautiful.
just goes from there with the bulbs becoming animated and the neon tubing becoming lit
So
up.
it's not just, oh, here's some lights.
No.
There's a little show.
Oh, it's a whole show, yeah.
awesome.
And then there's a point where you hear Strangers in the Night, and the way we have the speakers set up is your ears directed to look up, and we have an image of Liberace projected onto the piano sign that we have from Liberace's museum, and you see him playing Strangers in the Night.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, we
Again.
project lips onto Terrible Herbst. You know the Terrible Herbst cowboy?
Oh, yeah.
Right
I
now-
grew up here.
Right now, Brandon Flowers' lips from the Killers are projected onto him singing a song.
And my kids know the Killers. 'cause
Okay,
that's a
so they
Vegas
would
band.
know that.
Speaking of Lady Luck, I grew up with the Tompkins. I
Yeah.
graduated high school in 1983. There was only 11 high schools, so everybody was 1 degree of separation.
Mm-hmm.
The Herbst boys, when they were really young, we were literally neighbors. So I remember just loving that terrible Herbst because it was a negative adjective. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not like Happy Herbst and it's,
It's
it's
terrible
terrible.
Herbst.
And the Vegas, UNLV and the Rebels and
Yep.
Jerry Tarkanian and all that stuff. And gambling was illegal and taboo everywhere but Vegas
Yeah.
or Nevada. So
Yeah.
that's what gives these signs a great history, I believe.
Well, and it tells the story. We tell the story of Las Vegas. We have signs that date back to the 30s.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah. So, for instance,
And no, I don't know those signs.
Not
okay?
personally.
that old. All right, not personally.
so we have the Moulin Rouge sign, and
Yes.
that was the first racially integrated hotel in Las
And
Vegas.
Sammy Davis used to have to stay there.
He did, and that's where the third show came in. All of his friends who could stay on the Strip, he could not stay on the Strip. He could perform there, but he had to stay someplace else. So he would stay at the Moulin Rouge, and then his friends, Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, would come, and they would do another show at the Moulin Rouge at like 2 a.m. and it would be standing room only. The unfortunate thing is the Moulin Rouge only lasted about 6 months, and then it closed down. And
that I didn't even know about.
yeah, it was only open
They
for a
had
short
big
period.
sign. I mean, that Moulin Rouge sign.
Yeah, so we
was
have that in our
huge.
collection, and that's one of the only things that remains about the Moulin Rouge. So it's important that we preserve history, not implode it all the time.
Well, and especially that place because of, like you said, the African Americans could not stay on the Strip. I mean, that's one thing that people don't realize. Vegas was, I joke around,
was a
or
small-
not, but also serious.
Yeah.
It's the Mississippi of the West back in the day.
Yeah.
They weren't playing around. And whether it was mobsters or cowboys or, other groups, and eventually, like we said, Howard Hughes, you mentioned earlier, came in and made it corporate, but it was still very backwards when it came to races.
It was a small town also. We have Binion's Horseshoe. We have several of those signs. But what people don't realize is Ted Binion was one of the first people to really begin to offer comps to get people to stay there and to gamble and spend money in his casino. And he would send a car to pick you up. And nobody else had done that before. So he was very smart when it came to getting people to stay and gamble and spend more money.
And that's, once again, a different philosophy compared to today, is especially with the Horseshoe. There was no lounge show.
No.
There was not a showroom. You mentioned Frank Sinatra and then would play lounge acts or showrooms. But Binion's, it was straight drinking, gambling, eating, and we don't want you to leave. Because if you leave, you're going to spend your money elsewhere.
Someplace else.
And I remember the 90s when the Las Vegas Convention Authority said the Treasure Island had, was the first casino to have more than 50% of the revenue from non-gaming. Food, the paraphernalia,
Entertainment, yeah.
Entertainment and all that.
Yeah.
That's where things are changed. So, like my kids born here, they're not familiar with that drinking, gambling, comps, and fighting attitude.
Yeah.
It's a whole different
It's changed
world.
a lot.
It's a whole different world.
But that's why if you want to step back in time, you need to come to the Neon Museum and
Now,
see
what
it.
about any of the more recent casinos that, and I say recent, that now they're getting 20, 30 years old. Do you have any paraphernalia, signs, et cetera?
We do.
from
We
some of
have
those?
a guitar from the Hard Rock Cafe.
Oh, that's right.
And
you
that
mentioned that.
and that guitar though is 25 years old. So when they took it down, they had to redo everything on it. The interior needed to be redone. All of the neon glass had to be replaced. The red neon that's on that came from Germany because they don't manufacture it in the U.S. So that added time to the
No neon manufactured
No,
now?
there's neon, just not that particular color of red. So getting that color of red was a challenge. But we refurbished that. It is now in the yard. It's 82 feet tall, and the entire cost
And
of
how tall was it originally? That height, or did you?
no,
was it
it-
smaller?
No,
Was-
it was that
so
tall.
it's the exact same
Yeah,
size.
yeah, but it's on a pedestal so that you can walk around it. And we opened that. In fact, it's been up. It'll be a year in March that we refurbished that and put that up. But it was, over $300,000 to do that. People don't realize that it's very expensive to refurbish signs.
Well, I do want to talk about the funding, but also we were talking off, before we were filming. You said there was an ordinance in the city regarding neon.
The city of Las Vegas has an ordinance that new businesses have to either have their sign be animated or have neon. A portion of them have to have that component. So neon isn't going away. And we want to help preserve that as well by, in our building that we're going to be occupying later this year, we're going to have a neon lab where you can see neon artists blowing glass, and we're going to offer classes. If you want to come and learn how to blow glass, then you can come and do that.
You don't want me fixing anything, making
It's-
anything.
it's really
Our friend
amazing to
Becca
see.
over here, we could have her do that. She's talented at that. I'll break everything, and so I stay away from that. But you mentioned a new building. What's going on with the new building?
The building across the street from us, it used to be known as Reed Whipple. The city of Las Vegas owns that. We have a
That's
long-term.
going old school, that.
Oh
Whipple.
yes,
That's old school.
it is a long-term lease that we have with them. We're going to be gutting the interior, and it will become a new exhibition space for us. So we will be able to host traveling exhibitions. We'll be able to host our curated exhibitions, and then our administrative offices will be there as well, because right now we're kind of scattered all over the place for our admin staff, but there's just not space at the museum itself. It's a very small footprint. It's only about 2.5 acres.
So when you say a touring exhibit, what would be an example of that?
Well, for example, Tim Burton, His other exhibitions, they've toured the country.
Okay.
And so they will approach an organization and say, we have an exhibition, are you interested in hosting it for a period of time? So it would be that kind of thing, whether it's paintings, it's more signs, it's
that was
what
my
have
next
you.
question.
Yeah.
So it's not all neon. It can be.
It can be a variety of things,
Right.
yeah.
And where do you guys get your funding from?
We are a nonprofit organization, so we are funded by offering tours. We also host photo shoots, and the Latin Grammys did their opening number from our yard a year ago. We host weddings, we host special events. So all of those things help us keep our operations.
So you have generate a lot of revenue through these.
Yeah,
type
that's
of
how we
events.
stay open.
So make sure you guys get out there. Make sure you get to the Neon Museum. I'm going to do it now because I don't want my Vegas residency. Exactly. I only got 2 kids here. 2 are off.
Okay.
So we'll have a party of 4.
There you go.
Tony Abitangelo. I'd like to thank, first of all, Don Merritt for joining us here at the Paul Padda podcast here at Red Chim Studio. Take care. Thank you for watching. And make sure you get, once again, to the Neon Museum.
It's not about